Breaking tonight, a South Carolina man executed just 48 hours after a key witness in the murder case confessed to lying on the stand. 46-year-old Freddie Owens put to death for the killing of a convenience store clerk back in 1997. The U.S. Supreme Court denying his plea to weigh in, and the state's governor rejecting his request to grant him clemency after a co-defendant said he lied when he told police that Owens was there. The outrage over the capital punishment, which would mark the first execution in the state in more than a decade. Also breaking tonight, bombing Beirut. Israel striking Lebanon's capital, taking out top Hezbollah officials, including a commander wanted by the U.S. The blast ripping a building apart, leaving dozens injured. Ambulances seen rushing through the streets. The attack signaling the latest escalation following cross-border rocket attacks and the explosions from communication devices. Sheriff shooting mystery motive. A Kentucky community reeling after a sheriff allegedly shot and killed a judge in his own chambers. What we're learning about an argument between the two moments before shots rang out. Harrods billionaire abuse. The disturbing allegations against Mohammed Al-Fayed, the former owner of London's iconic department store, whose son died in a car crash with Princess Diana. Dozens of former employees coming forward alleging decades of sexual abuse, calling him a monster and a predator. What we know about the accusations just coming to light. Early voting starts, the sprint to Election Day kicking into high gear. 3 states beginning in-person and mail-in voting. The new decision over ballots in Georgia that could delay their results. And the unexpected moment from Vice President Kamala Harris. What she said about being a gun owner that's catching a lot of attention. Fake pandas, a China zoo trying to pull a fast one, painting dogs black and white to look like pandas. How the zoo was caught red-handed, leaving visitors outraged. And solar energy suitcase, Minnesota middle schoolers packing up a new project to bring electricity to students in East Africa. Their classroom exercise generating a life lesson, lighting up the lives of kids just like them. And if you forget your driver's license at home, your phone might be able to save you the hassle. The new Apple Wallet feature being tested out. Top Story starts right now. Good evening. I'm Ellison Barber in for Tom Llamas. Breaking tonight, the South Carolina man who was set to be executed at 6 p.m., according to the Associated Press, has now been executed. His execution about 48 hours after a key witness in the murder case confessed to lying on the stand. 46-year-old Freddie Owens sentenced to death for the killing of a convenience store clerk back in 1997. South Carolina's governor announced late this evening that he would not grant clemency. The U.S. Supreme Court, they denied a last-ditch effort asking justices to weigh in and to approve an application for stay of the execution. They did not do that. Justice Sotomayor said she would have granted it, but the court itself did not. We are now learning just within the last 5 minutes here that, according to the Associated Press, Freddie Owens has now been executed. The clerk in this case, who was killed back in the 90s, Irene Graves, she was fatally shot in the head when she couldn't get a safe open during a robbery at a speedway. You're seeing some of the video there. There was video at the time, but it was grainy. Ultimately, a co-defendant who had testified in the case made a bombshell announcement just this week saying that back then he struck a deal with prosecutors to avoid capital punishment and actually lied in his testimony, adding that Owens did not shoot the clerk and that despite what he'd said at the time, Owens wasn't even there. A state Supreme Court just yesterday rejecting the defense's emergency motion to postpone, saying it wasn't compelling enough information. This execution tonight, it marks South Carolina's first one in more than a decade. Protesters who have been outraged over the decision to move ahead with the execution, despite that new evidence, that claim from the co-defendant, they've been lining up outside of the facility where the execution was expected to take place throughout the day. When we reached out to the victim's son earlier, he told NBC News this, quote, "I'm just ready to close this chapter on this part of our lives and hopefully start getting our lives back together and moving on." He was a freshman in college when his mother was taken from him. So for more on the legal process that brought us here, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Ceballos. Danny, let's just start with what we know right now. Really, in the last 30, 40 minutes, it feels like just a flurry of information. You had the Supreme Court saying, OK, we're not going to essentially weigh in here. We're denying the application, the request for a stay, though it appears Justice Sotomayor didn't agree with that decision, wasn't in the majority. That's off the table. Then you have the governor of this state, Governor McMaster, saying, I won't grant clemency. I've reviewed this. I've made this decision. And then minutes later, the state moving ahead with it. Does it surprise you that there wasn't a pause here?
No. You see a lot of these last-minute reprieves in movies and TV shows, but they don't really happen all that often in real life. And even the defendant's appeal to the Supreme Court, it's not technically an appeal, but his request to the Supreme Court wasn't even based on the affidavit executed by his co-defendant Golden. In fact, for procedural reasons, he couldn't really raise that before the Supreme Court. Instead, his argument was, hey, there's an issue with disclosure of information about the means and method of execution. So he had a lot of irons in the fire trying to challenge this last minute, his execution. But unfortunately for these defendants, it's often a long shot at best, very rarely granted, these requests.
We saw all of these local courts as well, obviously, in the lead up to it being at the Supreme Court, rejecting those requests. As I understand, back when this story happened and Irene Graves was killed on Halloween night in this, what appeared to be a robbery gone bad, police at the time had released that surveillance video we were showing earlier where you see two men going into the store and robbing her, but you can't really see their faces. It was grainy. As I understand it, the only reason why they looked at Freddie Owens at the time was because that co-defendant, Stephen Golden, I believe was his name, said, I didn't do it alone. This is who the other guy was with me. And at the time, Freddie Owens said, I wasn't there. I was at home in bed. Would they go back and look at all of those statements as they're considering this in the lower courts? Or is everything just predicated on the latest, newest piece of evidence being that co-defendant now saying, oh, sorry, actually, I lied?
Well, there are a number of things here that are actually pretty common. In this case, there was no real forensic evidence. This was essentially a co-defendant implicating the other defendant, Owens. And you're absolutely right. He did so apparently for beneficial treatment. That also happens all the time. Co-defendants get benefits, get deals with prosecutors to say that their co-defendant committed the crime. That happens all the time. Here's something that happens more often than you think. Affidavits years later recanting by those witnesses. It actually does happen. Sometimes they're in prison and they sell it. They say, hey, I'll come in and testify. Give me $500 or send it to my mother. This kind of stuff happens more often than you think. So when this news emerged that there's this affidavit from one of the co-defendants saying, he didn't do it, he's innocent, I realize that that sounds so compelling. But in reality, the courts have seen that kind of evidence before, and they don't always say that that warrants vacating a conviction or even staying in execution.
It is surprising to me in some ways that court systems in the United States are still willing to not only convict and send someone to death for a crime, but also uphold it years later based on what appears to be, from an outside perspective, hearsay. I mean, when we're talking about Freddie Owens, later I do not believe he was convicted of this, but according to police in that state, he did kill a cellmate later on. So there are other issues here. But in terms of the one case at hand, it seems surprising to me that they were able to go death penalty just because one guy said, oh, I did it and he did too.
Frequently, it is the case that there isn't forensic evidence tying someone to a crime. Now, in modern times, we do often have video in a way that we just didn't even 10 years ago. I was actually astounded there was even video from a killing this far back, from a crime back then. Usually, you don't get video, and they called it grainy, but for the era, that wasn't actually all that bad. So, yes, frequently, a conviction is sustained based on the testimony of a co-defendant or an eyewitness. That's why prosecutors love cooperating witnesses. That's why they love approaching people they think are guilty of a crime and saying, hey, if you testify against the other guy, we'll give you leniency. And yes, juries like that kind of evidence. They will accept that a co-defendant has his own flaws, and they will find him credible in spite of the fact that he, too, is a criminal who has usually pleaded guilty. So, yes, we have many convictions and many people sitting in prison because of maybe just what one person said that they did.
When you look at the death penalty and its use in the state of South Carolina, this is the first time an execution has been carried out in about 13 years. There were some back and forth disputes with the government and concerns or questions about identifying who was going to supply the medications used for lethal injection. That obviously got sorted out. But now there are other people who are still on death row. Given that this has happened and it's the first one in 13 years, the governor choosing not to grant clemency, what does that likely tell you about what we should expect for the other people on death row in that state? Is it back in South Carolina?
Yes, last-minute requests for clemency. No one should expect those have realistic chances. It's a 1 in a million shot. And on appeal in general, even if it's on the means and method of execution, long shots. Once you're convicted, the burden is so steep, very few defendants can ever meet it.
All right, Danny Savalos, thank you so much. We appreciate you being with us for that breaking news. We're going to turn overseas now and go to the Middle East. Our other major headline, Israel bombing Beirut, saying it killed a top Hezbollah official in a targeted strike on the Lebanese capital. This after Hezbollah launched rockets across the border following attacks on their communication devices. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons is there.
The bomb that hit Beirut today, assassinating high-ranking Hezbollah commanders, Israel says, blew the walls from the front of a building, killing at least 14 and injuring 66, according to state media. This the impact of a single Israeli strike, as Lebanon lives with the threat of all-out war. President Biden insisting today peace is still possible.
A lot of things don't look realistic until we get them done. We have to keep at it.
Israel says its air raid killed a shadowy Hezbollah commander, Ibrahim Akil. This picture of him from decades ago. The US accused him of involvement in 2 1983 deadly bombings in Beirut, the US Embassy and the Marine Corps barracks. His life ended today by an Israeli jet over the same city. Our goals are clear. Our actions speak for themselves, Prime Minister Netanyahu posted. After a week that saw pagers and walkie-talkies explode in the hands of Hezbollah operatives, the dead and injured, including children.
It's a nightmare.
We met this eye surgeon rushing between hospitals.
It kills me. I mean, if you're going to go down and talk to the parents and tell them, well, sorry, you couldn't save any of your kids' eyes.
Hezbollah returning fire today, launching Katyusha rockets over the border after an Israeli bombardment overnight. Israel's defense minister tonight vowing we will continue operating against Hezbollah until we achieve our mission, ensuring the safe return of Israel's northern communities to their homes. Tonight, more war seems inevitable.
And Keir Simmons joins us now from Beirut. Keir, you were actually there today when the strike happened, right? Walk us through what you saw, what you heard.
That's right, Alison. Well, we heard the jet overhead here in Beirut, that Israeli jet, and then just minutes later, the pictures of destruction, honestly, on the screen, on the TV screens. The bombing happened just across Beirut there in a Hezbollah stronghold, a place where Hezbollah has a lot of support and in a very residential area, Alison. And this, as you can see from those pictures, was a substantial munition. This is not what de-escalation looks like.
Is there any sort of glimmer of where there could maybe be a ramp for some sort of de-escalation, even though, as you're reporting, we're clearly not seeing it right now? Is there any will, either from the Hezbollah or the Israelis, to say, OK, let's not further this, let's not escalate more?
Yeah, not from what they're saying. I mean, what the Israelis are saying, you heard at the end of my piece there, is that they will not back down until tens of thousands of Israeli citizens can go back to their homes along the border. There are also Lebanese who can't go to their homes along the border. Hezbollah is saying, well, we are not going to back down until there is a change in the situation in Gaza. So the simple question is no. And what the Israelis clearly appear to be attempting to achieve is to put enough pressure on Hezbollah that they do concede. Now, whether or not Hezbollah will do that, I mean, I think that really depends on the leadership, but also on on Iran. But when you think about it tactically, they can just maintain this position, if you like, take the blows, and there have been serious blows against Hezbollah this week, and wait to see what the Israelis do. And just practically, if you're trying to get your citizens back into homes in a particular area, it's hard to know how you do that without ground forces. That's what worries the international community, that you're going to see a ground engagement far more substantial than artillery and air power at some point.
Here's Simmons in Beirut. Thank you. Moving to politics now in the 2024 presidential race. Vice President Kamala Harris attacking former President Donald Trump on abortion rights. This as election officials in Georgia make a controversial change. NBC News senior White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez has this report.
Tonight, in-person early voting is already underway in 3 states: Virginia, South Dakota, and Minnesota.
This is the most consequential vote in my lifetime.
And now a new controversy over how ballots will be counted in battleground Georgia. The state's GOP-led election board voted to require counties to hand count all ballots cast on Election Day, a move critics say could delay the reporting of results.
So what are we trying to do here? We're trying to sow chaos?
Even though Georgia's Republican Attorney General says the election board may be overstepping its authority, Republican supporters say hand counting is important for election integrity.
Allowing our elected officials to have as much data as possible to make their decisions should ensure that they will certify.
Vice President Harris traveling to battleground Georgia, highlighting abortion rights.
This is a health care crisis, and Donald Trump is the architect of this crisis.
Last night at a star-studded virtual rally hosted by Oprah Winfrey, relatives of a 28-year-old pregnant woman, Amber Thurman, blamed her death 2 years ago on delays in her care because of Georgia's restrictive abortion laws.
I want y'all to know Amber was not a statistic.
Meanwhile, former President Trump arguing he should be getting more of the Jewish vote.
If Kamala Harris wins instead of the most pro-Israel president ever, you will have the most anti-Israel president by far.
Saying the Jewish community would be partly to blame if he's defeated.
If I don't win this election, and the Jewish people would really have a lot to do with that if that happens.
Both presidential campaigns now ramping up outreach to younger voters. Here in battleground Wisconsin, first-time voter Bradley Galvin tells us he thinks Trump will improve the economy.
I feel like he was one of the first politicians that kind of just says what he wants and doesn't try to pretend someone he's not.
While Harris supporter, fourth-year med student Caitlin Landry, who wants to be an OBGYN, says abortion rights are critical.
I am super excited about having someone who has a female perspective, a perspective of someone who is a minority. I think that's something that we need.
And Gabe joins us now from the Harris rally in Madison, Wisconsin. Gabe, what's the significance of Harris campaigning in Wisconsin this evening?
Hi there, Allison. Well, it's obviously a very critical state, and new polls show that it is a dead heat in Wisconsin, part of Kamala Harris's so-called blue wall. Look, Democrats really want to make a push to get younger voters out here, like we mentioned in the piece. And for Kamala Harris rallying supporters here, this could be make or break for her in this race, Allison.
And Gabe, while we have you, I know that you're getting some new reporting information related to the assassination attempt on former President Trump back in July in Butler, Pennsylvania. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Allison, the Secret Service released a report today looking at some of what the acting Secret Service director called the failures of that assassination attempt back in July. And the Secret Service now saying that it did not communicate with local police, and that local police was responsible for securing that roof where the gunman was eventually taken down. But the problem, there were many problems, among them that local police didn't communicate with the Secret Service. One of the local agencies, which was not identified in the report, they actually asked for help from a different police agency. But the acting Secret Service director did say that while there has been an increased tempo in the requirements of Secret Service over the past couple of months, that at no time did the Secret Service deny any security requests from the Trump campaign. Allison?
Gabe Gutierrez, thank you. Next tonight, the fallout from that bombshell report about the Republican gubernatorial candidate from North Carolina. Mark Robinson and disturbing comments posted on a porn forum, allegedly. Robinson denying those claims and remaining in the race after the deadline to drop out passed last night. NBC News correspondent Antonia Hilton joins us now from Raleigh, North Carolina with more. Antonia, bring us up to speed here. This deadline, it came and went last night for Robinson to drop out of the race. Presumably, he is staying on the ballot, can't change it even if he wanted to down the road. What realistically happens next here?
Well, Ellison, that deadline was 11:59 p.m. last night, so the window has really closed here for any Republican in the state of North Carolina who is hoping that they could replace Robinson with someone else. That's really not an option. He is staying in this race. His own team has consistently said so over the last 24 or so hours. So the question really now on the minds of a lot of the political operatives on both sides of the aisle here is, well, what impact does this have on the Republican ticket? For Democrats who are celebrating this, frankly, and are looking forward to really tying Robinson to every Republican up and down the ballot, you know, they see this as a win for them. But for the Republicans, it is going to be more complicated. They have released statements technically standing behind Robinson, but often in these statements, including one from the Trump campaign, they don't even use Robinson's name at all. And so you're seeing this sort of effort to sort of stay in, but also try to keep him away from the rest as they look at the fallout. And a state that has a lot of independent voters who may be turned off by this kind of scandal, you can tell there's some concern, Elson.
Yeah, talk to us more about that, Antonia, because you have such a long history of reporting in that state and speaking with voters. I mean, dating back to well before this election cycle. What are you hearing from voters, be they Democrats, Republicans, or independents?
Well, I can tell you Democrats say that, well, this is what we expected. We've been trying to tell our friends, our neighbors, that this is who Mark Robinson is all along. And that's because he has a history of inflammatory remarks before this CNN report ever came out. For example, at one point referencing the Holocaust as hogwash, kind of casting doubt on some of the facts of that tragedy. And then other really incendiary remarks about women and their reproductive rights or LGBTQ people. For moderates and independents. And this is a state that has always had a very large population of independents, people who are pretty proud about, you know, split ticket voting or changing their party and really paying attention to policy. This is not what those kinds of voters want to hear or have thrown at them in the midst of an election. And so I think that's the major concern here. But if you are a Democrat, a strategist working with the Harris campaign, those are the people you're going after right now because you're going to try to bring them into the fold as they try to turn this state blue and do something that over the last several cycles, Democrats have frankly failed to do, Ellison.
Antonia Hilton reporting in North Carolina. Thank you. Now to the Kentucky sheriff behind bars for allegedly shooting a judge in his own chambers after an argument. The motive still unclear. NBC's Adrian Broaddus has the latest.
A sheriff who vowed to protect and serve, now on the other side of the law.
Webster County Courthouse, that shots fired on the second floor.
Police say Sheriff Sean Mickey Steins shot and killed Judge Kevin Mullins in his chamber Thursday. Investigators are searching for a motive.
We know that it was an argument between the two that led up, but what exactly transpired prior to the shots being fired, still things that we're trying to get answers to.
The 54-year-old judge served for over a decade on the bench.
In a word, patient is what he was, and compassionate.
Attorney Seth Combs is a longtime colleague of the judge.
Big loss in a lot of ways. Honestly, just trying to accept that it's real.
According to court documents, Sheriff Steins is listed as a defendant in a 2022 lawsuit where one of his deputies is accused of sexually abusing a woman in Judge Mullins' chambers. The lawsuit alleges Steins failed to, quote, adequately train and supervise the deputy. Meanwhile, the sheriff turned suspect is behind bars tonight, leaving the tight-knit community stunned.
My heart goes out to the family, both of them. But this is shocking, really.
And Adrian Broaddus joins us now from Kentucky. Adrian, when do we expect to see this sheriff in court? And in terms of charges, what exactly is he facing?
Ellison, Sheriff Stein is facing first-degree murder charges. As of right now, he has not retained an attorney. A special prosecutor will handle this case. Commonwealth's attorney here in Letcher County told us over the phone today he has recused himself from the case, citing that he and Judge Mullins married sisters. Ellison?
Adrian brought us, thank you. Still ahead tonight, the disturbing allegations against the former owner of the iconic London department store Harrods. Dozens of women accusing Mohammed Al-Fayed of abuse, saying he used his power and his wealth to torment young females. Now to the unsettling new allegations against Mohammed Al-Fayed, the former owner of the iconic London department store Harrods. He's also the father of Dodi Al-Fayed, who was killed in a car crash with Princess Diana. At least 37 women, many of them former employees, accusing the late billionaire of sexual abuse. NBC's Danielle Hamamdjian sat down with one of those former staffers, and we do want to warn viewers, many of these details are disturbing.
The Egyptian billionaire businessman Mohammed Al-Fayed is known around the world as the man who tried to play matchmaker for Princess Diana.
May I present my son, Dodi?
Your Highness. The ill-fated courtship fictionalized in the last season of The Crown. But who the public saw as a mogul, many of his female staff at the iconic Harrods store in London saw as a monster. Al-Fayed, who died last year, is accused by his alleged victims of being a serial predator who abused his power to torment young women. Among them was Sophia Stone, who was hired at age 19 hoping to become a buyer, only to suddenly be promoted to his personal assistant.
I was sitting on the sofa and he came across the room.
This is what happened the first of many times, Sophia says, Al-Fayed tried to rape her.
You know, and he forced me back and it was trying to kiss me and put his hands up my skirt and feel my boobs and push me down, and I went crazy and was like kicking him off, get off, get off, get off. Kicked him and he sort of fell back and just was like ha ha ha, laughing, like making a joke out of it, like it was a bit of fun for him, and I was just terrified.
Sophia is one of 37 women whose lawyers say are planning to bring a case against Harrods, now under different ownership. In a statement, the company said in part, "We are utterly appalled by the allegations of abuse perpetrated by Mohammed Al-Fayed. These were the actions of an individual who was intent on abusing his power wherever he operated, and we condemn them in the strongest terms. We also acknowledge that during this time his victims were failed, and for this we sincerely apologize. It has been our priority to settle claims in the quickest way possible, avoiding lengthy legal proceedings for the women involved. The process is still available for any current or former Harrods employees."
This is one of the worst cases of corporate sexual exploitation that certainly I and perhaps the world has ever seen.
Acting as a consultant for the UK lawyers.
Mohammed Al-Fayed sex trafficked some of these victims from place to place.
Famed American attorney Gloria Allred.
I just felt that I should say yes to supporting the victims. There's so many of them, and they've been damaged so deeply and held the secret within them for years.
Among the allegations, lawyers say the women were forced to undergo invasive medical tests and were checked for sexually transmitted diseases.
The women would arrive for their medical examination none the wiser, expecting this to be an examination to perhaps check their weight, their blood pressure, or their height. They would then be told that actually the examination would involve a full internal screening, including a full cervical smear, sometimes having their ovaries checked, and a full sexual health screening.
The lawyers also say the women were followed by Al-Fayed's security team and their phones bugged. With her husband by her side, Sophia explains why it was so hard to leave during her 3 years at Harrods.
He had so much control, he had so much power. I thought that, I don't know, I'd be followed. I didn't know, I was scared. I also had, you know, I had to live. I had to pay rent. I had to survive. I was on my own. I didn't feel like I could talk to anyone about this. I was going through this sort of hell. Plus I feel like some part of me is like, he kind of brainwashed me to start with. I felt like I had this, I hated him, but I also thought he was like, I don't know. him. But I sort of cared for him. So mixed up.
He betrayed you, darling.
Totally. I was scared.
And you weren't allowed to talk to any other female. Did you know at the time other women were going through this?
I guessed. But we couldn't talk. No one could talk. No one spoke to each other.
That secrecy wasn't just among colleagues. It was also among American sisters, twins, working at Harrods over the holiday period decades ago. One of the sisters speaking to NBC News on condition of anonymity.
He basically kind of grabbed over to kiss me. And at this point, my sister and I had not spoken to each other about anything that had been happening to us leading up to this.
May I ask why?
I think I was embarrassed. And it sounds crazy, but I didn't want to ruin this opportunity for my sister.
Al-Fayed, the women say, would ask them to call him Papa. He showered them with gifts and offered to look after them, only to become the one they ultimately needed protection from.
I no longer feel afraid, so I speak for my daughters, my nieces, for my good friend Catherine, and all the survivors of sexual abuse in this room today that were silenced for so many years, who suffered at the hand of the predator, Mohammed Al-Fayed.
Danielle Hamamjan, NBC News, London.
When we come back, a major update on the Army soldier who fled to North Korea. Travis King appearing in a military court facing desertion charges after he ran into North Korea last July. How he pled and the late details now coming in. Back now with Top Stories news feed, starting with an update on the U.S. soldier who ran across the North Korean border last year. U.S. Army Private Travis King pleading guilty to a slew of charges, including desertion. King ran off from a tour of the DMZ last year, crossing into North Korea. He was released back to the U.S., where he was charged by the U.S. military. In court, King said that he was dissatisfied with the work and wanted to leave the Army. And a routine traffic stop leading to a police chase with a limo in Wisconsin. Police in Kenosha County attempting to pull over a limo driving under the speed limit when the driver took off. The suspect then crashing into a ditch and fleeing into a wooded area. Police and K-9 units eventually catching up to the suspect. Police say he bit an officer while being arrested. He is now facing several charges. And the FDA has authorized at-home use of a nasal flu vaccine. AstraZeneca's Flu Mist is a nasal spray that can be used in adults and children. It'll still require a prescription and it is expected to be widely available for at-home use by next fall. Right now, it will remain available as an in-office treatment. The current out-of-pocket cost for a dose is about $40. And starting today, California residents can add their driver's license and state IDs to their Apple Wallet. The move is part of the state's mobile driver's license pilot program, allowing people to access their IDs on their devices. Apple users can scan their IDs into their iPhone, then provide a scan of their face. The state will verify the information before the ID is put in the wallet. Right now, the mobile IDs can be used at select TSA checkpoints in California, as well as participating businesses. 6 other states have similar programs. Now to the latest in the arrest of rap mogul Sean Diddy Combs, who is being held without bail in Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center while he awaits trial. According to NBC News' Chloe Malas, Diddy has been placed under a suicide watch, and she joins us now in studio with more details. Chloe, walk us through your latest reporting. What do we know right now?
So we know from a source close to the situation that, yes, he is under suicide watch, Allison, but this is a precautionary measure because he is a high-profile inmate. But just moments ago, we just received a statement from Combs's team, and they say that he is strong, healthy, and he's focused on his defense. He is committed to fighting this case and has full confidence in both his legal team and the truth. And look, he could be behind bars for up to a year. That's how long it could take for this to finally get to trial.
And this Metropolitan Detention Center, where Diddy is being held, it has been notorious in a lot of circles for high rates of violence. There have been murders there, at least 2 suicides that took place there last summer. In light of what happened within the prison system in this state with Jeffrey Epstein, do we know what, if anything, prison officials, jail officials are doing to try and make sure Diddy is staying safe here?
So NBC News has reached out to the Federal Bureau of Prisons out of D.C., and they just say, look, we don't want to talk about Epstein in this situation. We are confident that the Metropolitan Detention Center is fit for him to be in pre-trial, but Combs' legal team is saying that is not the case. I mean, you point out a lot of interesting things here. I mean, this precautionary measure of him being under suicide watch could also be a way to keep him safe from this notorious jail that's known for its violence. I mean, you talk about the fact that there have been murders there. There have been stabbings. One inmate stabbed 44 times. He survived, but it was caught on camera. 2 stabbings, like you said, suicides, also overcrowding, food contamination. His team wants to move him to a jail in New Jersey, but we don't know if that's actually going to happen or be granted. We do know that he is planning to appeal this again to the 2nd District Court. But as you saw with Ghislaine Maxwell, who tried to appeal her bail more than once, she was not successful. In the meantime, his team really wants to make sure that he can prepare for trial, according to them. They want to make sure he has access to the library, access to the computer system. And they're going to be going there a lot because they have to lay out this case. And like I said, between motions and hearings and all the pretrial discovery that's going to take place, again, this can take up to a year, but he will be back in court very soon on October 9th, and that's when we'll learn more. And other people could be arrested, Ellison, like you heard from the U.S. Attorney's Office. They're not taking other arrests in terms of other people in his circle off the table.
Chloe Malas, thank you. Up next tonight, sparking a new solution to East Africa's energy problem. Minnesota middle schoolers donating a solar energy suitcase to help students get electricity in their classrooms. We'll tell you all about the heartwarming project next. Back now with top stories Global Watch, starting with a major prison break in northeast Nigeria. Officials say more than 270 inmates have escaped from a prison in Borno State after heavy flooding decimated prison walls. So far, only about 7 people have been recaptured. The West African nation has been struck by weeks of severe rainfall and flooding. About 270 people have died and more than 640,000 have been displaced. The EU pledging a $39 billion loan to Ukraine to help the country rebuild. The money will go directly to the country's economy and war-shattered power grid. Interest earned on profits from Russia's frozen central bank assets will be used as collateral on the loan. The EU has provided Ukraine with more than $132 billion in military and economic assistance since the full-scale war began back in 2022. And an update tonight, a zoo in China finally admitting that 2 panda pups that went viral earlier this year are, in fact, dogs. The zoo admitted the 2 are just painted chow chows after visitors complained the so-called pandas were panting and barking. Some visitors have since asked for their money back, claiming false advertising. Now to the class project, making a difference. It's something we take for granted, right? But over 1 billion people live without reliable, constant access to electricity around the world. But students in Minnesota, they're working to change that. They are building solar equipment that will be used by other students in sub-Saharan Africa.
1, 2, 3.
At Stewartville Middle School in southern Minnesota, students are working on a bright idea.
When I first saw that light bulb turn on, I was not expecting that. I was expecting something like to explode, like the battery.
A portable source of energy, small enough to be carried by hand, but with enough power to last for a week.
The bigger solar panel allows the 5 or 6 lights to be powered about 50 to 60 hours a week.
These solar suitcase kits, part science and part service.
But when they know that they're building something that matters and that's going to change lives, they suddenly become excited about what they're doing.
Gigi Deco Goldman is the co-founder of We Share Solar, a nonprofit that sends these assembled kits to energy-scarce regions.
And over 65,000 students and teachers have participated in the We Share Solar program here in the United States. And solar suitcases that they have built have provided 14 million hours of light and charging capacity to over 500,000 students in sub-Saharan Africa, primarily in refugee camps.
This kid likely headed to a school in rural Kenya or Uganda. After charging during the day with just a solar panel, it can be used to keep the lights on in places without reliable electricity, so students can feel safer after dark. In Minnesota, about 160 kids participated in this year's program, split up into 5 teams.
Reporters, engineers, artists, community relations, quality control.
And their suitcase will now join more than 1,100 solar suitcases deployed around the world.
We have a lot of things most people don't have in the world, and you got to feel that gratitude about that. And you also have to feel happy that you're helping them out.
A group of students learning not just about the flow of electricity, but how to power positive change for others. Thank you at home for watching Top Story. I'm Ellison Barber in New York for Tom Llamas. Stay right there. More news is on the way.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.